All right, as you probably saw in the beginning, we're gonna make shrimp ceviche today. So today we're gonna start off with a cucumber, and then we're going to cut off the ends, just like that, and then cut it down the middle lengthwise. So what we want to do now is get all these guts out of the cucumber, and the easiest way I found to do that is through a spoon and just kind of scraping away. So I'm going to scrape away and put that all in the trash when I'm done with it. But be kind of careful so you don't pull too hard and break the cucumber, which does happen, especially when your cucumbers are really thin. But that gets all the seeds out, which will give us a much nicer texture when we go to make the ceviche. So now we're going to take our cucumbers and we're going to slice them usually into about 4 or 5 strips. And it's about a ½ an inch in diameter. And then we're going to cube it, so we're going to cut it into like roughly ½ inch sizes. And that's going to be mostly the size of what we're going to cut our ingredients into today to provide like a uniform texture of the ceviche. That way you don't have too many different ingredients that are different sizes. So some of you might be wondering, how do they call this ceviche? I make it different. Some of you might be thinking, where did this guy learn how to use a knife? And really, I didn't learn how to make any of it in any professional sense. So this is just our homemade version that we like to make at home. Next up, we're gonna go with one of the tomatoes. So with the tomatoes, same trick with the cucumbers. What we wanna do is take the seeds and everything out of the middle. What you can do here at the ends, if you don't wanna waste all that, you can just trim off some of that extra meat right there, and that goes great into the ceviche. So cut it into half, and then I find it relatively easy to just go along the sides and carefully cut the guts out, because there's usually some meat holding it in there. And then you want to get these seeds out over the trash can. All right, same thing as with the cucumbers, cut it into about ½ inch strips. So we'll do both halves this time. And then we'll cut them again into about ½ inch chunks. So by removing the seeds, we end up getting rid of a lot of the slimy texture that would otherwise form inside of the ceviche after it sits for a while. Same thing with the cucumbers. If you don't take those out, you're just gonna end up with a slimy, kind of bubbly mess, and this makes it much more enjoyable to have, more refreshing. So we'll take those tomatoes and set those aside with the other ones we've already cut up. Or again, if you're doing it at home, just toss it straight into the bowl. No need to be fancy for the cameras. All right, one more main ingredient would be the onion. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a red onion, of which I've already taken about a half of it, and we're gonna cut this other half up. Just cut off the tops and bottoms real quick, peel back that layer, save as much of that onion as you can. And I'm using a red onion. Some people might use a white onion, it's up to them. I think the purple colors coming through on the red onion look really good in contrast to the other ingredients on the ceviche. And the red onion seems to have kind of more of a radish, sharp bite to it. So cut it into ½ inch sections, roughly like that. And then again, about ½ inch cubes. And these will come apart into different pieces, so don't need to worry about that too much. We're just gonna scoop that up, put that along with our other red onion that we've got here to the side. And onto the jalapeno. So the jalapeno is optional, but it does add some nice spice to it without going too far overboard. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna cut it in half lengthwise, kind of like we did with the tomato and cucumber. We wanna take out the seeds as much as possible and this firm stem that goes right down the middle. This we're gonna cut smaller than the ½ inch. We're probably gonna do this into about 1/4 inch strips. So one of the few things that I tend to cut a little smaller than when I do the tomatoes and cucumbers and the shrimp, which we'll get to in just a moment. So in total, I usually use about 2 or 3 jalapenos in this recipe, just depending on how big the jalapenos are, but you can't really go too far overboard with them. These fresh garden jalapenos are not too bad. And we'll set those aside as well. All right, now we're gonna move on to the shrimp. So with the shrimp, traditionally in ceviche, what you're gonna have is raw shrimp that you're gonna cook in lime juice. But for the sake of keeping it keto, and also because some people don't have a preference for cooking the shrimp in the lime juice, what we're gonna do is pull the tails right off the shrimp, because there's lots of good meat right up in there. And you can either leave the shrimp whole if you prefer to do that, but again, for the uniformity of the texture, what I like to do is cut them into about 3 or 4 pieces a piece. And these are 31 to 40 count shrimp. So I just bought them previously cooked, peeled, deveined, tail on. And you could either come in and you can cut them with a knife if you want to, or you could do what I usually do and just pop them into 3 or 4 pieces by hand. It goes so much quicker that way, and it also gives it a different texture. So you get more of like a crude texture when you're doing that way. So just kind of pop them with your hands. Makes gross little sounds, but you know, if you're adverse to seafood anyways, you're probably not making this dish. It's usually made with like fish or shrimp, sometimes other types of seafood like octopus you see on some rare occasions. Now we're gonna take some limes. All we're gonna do with the limes is cut them right in half and set them aside, because we're gonna juice those and put those onto it in just a moment. All right, now to combine it up and actually bring it all together. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring on our bowl, and we're gonna set that right here and then start combining into this bowl. And I'll start just by putting the cucumbers in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll add in our 4 large diced cucumbers that we've already de-seeded and chopped up. So get those in there. Now comes in that great color contrast of the red tomatoes. So we'll take those and we'll just add those right on top. Take in our green jalapenos. You can do red ones if you can find them. The colors don't seem to make much of a difference in heat. If you really wanted just a little bit of pepper flavor and didn't want the heat, I guess you could use some bell peppers, but we've never really noticed them being a problem. And then now we're gonna put in some of this red onion. So with this, I'm gonna probably have to break it up with my hands a little bit as we get it in there. Making a little bit of a mess, but just go ahead and combine those red onions in. And before we get the shrimp tossed in there, what I'm probably gonna do is go ahead and give this a light toss to kind of incorporate the ingredients, and we're gonna season up the vegetables a little bit. One thing we're gonna do that some people may not is we're gonna add a little bit of oil to this mix. That little bit of fresh, pure, cold-pressed olive oil adds a little extra flavor, but it also helps kind of keep the ingredients from turning, as well as the lime juice that we're gonna add in a moment. So it's a combination of increasing that fat, a little bit of preserving, and also for flavor. So we'll take that cold pressed extra virgin olive oil, and we're just gonna give it a little bit of a drizzle going around. So probably just add a little bit more. And we'll come in with some black pepper. I like to grind it fresh, but you know, if you don't have a grinder, you can get by with some of the pre-made stuff. And add as much as you like. I would say add about like half a teaspoon overall to the whole dish, something like that. And you can come in with your favorite salt. Sea salt tastes great with this one. I'm happening to use some Himalayan pink salt because it's what I've got in the grinder. But since you're making it with seafoods, sea salt is the natural go-to for that one. I'm also going to combine in some minced garlic, or if you prefer to keep the carbs down a little bit, you could also go with granulated garlic. But I do recommend putting the garlic into the dish. It does add some nice flavor and combines well with all the other ingredients that we got. Now this is one of my favorite seasonings. I use it on avocados, all kinds of stuff. You can even use it when you're having fruit, if you're eating some of the berries and stuff on keto. But we add it to quite a bit of stuff. So go ahead and put that in there. I'm probably going to use about 2-3 tablespoons overall. So that's Tajin Classic. It's like chilies, lime juice, salt, things like that. So let's go ahead and give these a toss again. Get that seasoning nice and incorporated in there. Now we're gonna have a little bit of a struggle getting all the shrimp in here and combining it, because this bowl is gonna be nice and full, at least until we have our first serving. So now we're gonna take that 2 pounds of shrimp. So I didn't mention how much earlier, but it's 2 pounds, 31.40 count. We've broken it up in about 3-4 pieces a piece. And now what I like to do here at this part is to put the limes directly onto the shrimp. Somehow in my head, that makes it taste a little bit better when I do it that way, and maybe because you would more traditionally cook the shrimp in lime juice. So I put that into my press, the peels on and everything, Kind of gets out some of that olive essential oil out of the peel. Helps add to that flavor. I don't recommend doing this with the already squeezed lime juice. You know, you'll probably see some lemon and lime juice in the baking aisle, stuff like that at the grocery store. It just doesn't have the same flavor. You know, it's like the fresh squeezed lime juice really puts it on. And in this big of a dish, I'm probably using about 5 whole limes. You know, not key limes, just regular old limes, Mexican limes, whatever you want to call them. You know, here these grow really well. But you don't want to be using beer limes and stuff like that. I've tried it, they just don't have quite the same flavor when it comes to making the dish. So let's go ahead and finish up getting these on there. And now I'm going to also add in some cilantro. You could add it at any stage, but I pretty much just about forgot about it. So what I like to do is rip off about a handful, and then you can either shred it by hand, you can cut it, dice it, whatever you like to do with yours. Just, to me, it's easier this way. And then kind of sprinkle that in. We're gonna come back and stir that up here in just a second. Now that we're back, we're gonna give it a final toss. And you probably wanna let this sit in the refrigerator for, I don't know, at least 30 minutes. You can leave it in there for probably no more than 2 days. I'm sure that the seafood and everything will last longer, but really you're gonna be serving this up in some nice big bowls. And what I like to do on top is put on some Valentina hot sauce, extra hot if you can handle it, and some extra tahini just for that final seasoning. Just go ahead and toss it all together. And you get the nice white and pink hues with the shrimp, the greenish white hues of the cucumber, nice red tomatoes, purple onion, green cilantro, jalapenos, and everything. Just kind of combines and comes into the national colors of the flag of Mexico pretty much. You know, it's kind of like the mirepoix type of concept where you have these 3 main colors that make up the majority of your ingredients as you're preparing dishes. So now that we've got it there, you would cover that up and set it in the fridge, or you can eat it right away if you're impatient like I sometimes